So, an analysis of the graphic novel The Nesting Place. First, I will be taking you through the three main characters that we will be focusing on. So, the three characters are Belle, older brother Clarence, and his girlfriend Rebecca, which we'll get back to her later. So, the story goes as follows. Belle is going on a little vacation at her older brother's house out in the countryside. She mostly just stays inside and reads books, but one day she goes into the forest and falls down into a cave, where she finds Rebecca. And there Belle finds out that Rebecca is actually some kind of worm-like monster who's just wearing human skin and blending in. Rebecca wants to put some of the babies she has in the cave into Belle so that they can finally have a real body. Belle though convinces Rebecca not to do this, and the story then ends with Belle and Clarence going into the city where something weird happens. But what are the characteristics of these three characters? We have Clarence. He's very tall and slim and stereotypically pretty for a man, and he seems to love Rebecca, and he also seems to care about his sister Belle. But it's a bit more complicated for her. She seems very sad and depressed and withdrawn, likes to be alone, read books, and some of this is probably due to the recent death of their mother, which she had a close relationship to. And she's very angry and frustrated at Clarence because she felt like Clarence just spent more time with Rebecca than their mother when she got sick. Rebecca is also tall and slim and very feminine, and she seems very charming and caring on the outside, but as we said before, we found out that she's actually some kind of monster. But even though she kills people, she says it's only to do it for her children. She doesn't really want to. And this theme with exploring a monster that can take over someone's skin and look like a person but is really a monster underneath is commonly explored in horror. And it's a kind of different branch from the fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown is not knowing if something is there, but not knowing if something is there, like when it's dark at night. Don't worry, I'm still here. The dark is scary because we are not sure if there's something out there. Might not be, but there could be. It is scary, like someone may look like a person, talk like a person, act like a person, but maybe they are not really a person. Moving on, in graphic novels there are usually used different techniques to put emphasis on different things in the story, and one of these techniques are different angles and perspectives. Panoramic view are really good to show the reader where we are in the world and what kind of climate that we are in, and it is used in the story to show Clarence's house, and we can really see that this is out in the middle of nowhere. Close-ups, on the other hand, is used to show the really small details in something. It is usually shown in faces, as you can see here. For example, when Belle is lying in bed after being attacked by Rebecca and she hears a voice, and we can really see in her eyes that she is afraid, she is scared. And I also thought it was a cool detail when Rebecca taunts Belle later in the story. You can see that she closes her eyes a little bit more, and we can maybe feel like as if she's getting more angry. And also a cool detail when Rebecca, early in the story, when we didn't know that she was a monster yet, she gives this little ominous look, and it's kind of a weird angle to zoom in on her eyes, and it's a good kind of foreshadowing of what is to come. And I here have an example where Belle is laying in bed and Rebecca is sitting on top of her, as we can see the kind of perspective that they see each other from. Belle is seeing Rebecca from below, and Rebecca is sitting on top of Belle and looking down at her. And it also kind of shows the power relationship between these two characters at the moment. Rebecca is the one in control. She's the one that has the power, and Belle is below her and does not really have anything to say, which also the facial expression is fitting that perfectly. But there is also a very distinct color scheme in this story. Around our main character Belle, there's a lot of gray and dull colors, which fits her depressed and sad mental state pretty well. The color of what clothing the different characters wear also kind of reflects their personalities. Belle is wearing a lot of gray and colors, which again reflects how she's sad and a bit depressed. And I just thought it was interesting that the only time we see her smile, she's wearing a gray shirt with a little red on it. Like there is some happiness creeping in, and she's also outside in these warm orange colors, which seems also to show that she's a little bit more happy. In contrast to what Belle is wearing, Rebecca is almost always wearing strong colored green and blue dresses, which really stands out in this kind of gray world. We can see down here in the picture that she's actually the only thing with color in it, which also fits her flamboyant and charismatic personality very well. There's also an interesting use of colors when we have Rebecca in the past and Belle in the present, where Rebecca's time period is chosen with gray colors and we have then colors in the present, so we as readers very easily distinguish between the past and the present. One of the things I like most about this story is the typography, which I find very interesting. We cannot hear Belle's thoughts in the story, but there is a third-person narrator who is indicated mostly through a red caption. And for the last things I want to show you about the typography, you need to come a little closer, so come here. Oh yes, that's perfect. A couple of times in the graphic novel there is the use where the dialogue balloons are kind of out of the frame of the caption, so we as the reader cannot really read properly what the other people are saying. But this actually goes to show that Belle is not really listening to what they're saying, and because we are seeing the story through her perspective, we can't really hear what they are saying either. She's kind of just zoning out. There is also use of the typography and the dialogue balloon shape and the color of the text. Here you can see that the shape of the dialogue balloon, the arrow that is pointing to where the voice is coming from, is kind of coming from everywhere from Rebecca at once, which really helps this feeling of something is really wrong here. And the color of this text is red a lot of places, and the red can usually be like color meaning love and affection, but here it is more danger and aggressiveness. Furthermore, here the typography is used that this snake-like sounds in the backgrounds from the worms is not really loud, it's not very present in the panel, but it is everywhere in the background and it is always present, and this kind of gives us the feeling of these snake-like sounds coming from the worms. And it are also going over the dialogue balloons, and we can see here that her hand and the worms are going over Belle's ear, and therefore she cannot really hear what is being said, so we as the reader cannot really hear what is being said either, which I just think it's brilliant. I also forgot to mention that sometimes when Rebecca talks, the font of the text in her dialogue balloons is kind of different, as to show her putting more emphasis, which seems more sensual and feminine on some words, which also helps convey her character and how she talks. Last but not least, symbolism. Belle's older brother Clarence is a human being in the story. Or is he? Because earlier in the story we see Rebecca's teeth kind of jittering and making weird sounds when she eats, and first we don't pay much attention to it, but we found out that she's a monster, and we then make the correlation that that is probably why her teeth are moving weird. And then, at the end of the story, we see Clarence's teeth do the same thing when he eats. At first, I just thought that, okay, Belle must be paranoid or something after everything that happened. But I guess that Rebecca could have put in some of her babies or some monster inside of Clarence in the end of the story, and that will explain it. But maybe he has been a monster from the beginning, because in the beginning of the story, Clarence says, a leech is just a friend that you haven't met. And the monster Rebecca has a lot of similarities with a leech. So it seems kind of weird since most people do not like leeches. So why does he like leeches? Of course, I cannot say which one of these scenarios are the real one, but it can definitely be interpreted in many different ways. The title of the story, The Nesting Place, also has a meaning. At the start of the story, Belle's mother talks about the worst kind of monster, the burrowing kind that crawls into you and makes a home there, and that seems to fit the description of what kind of monster Rebecca is very well. But I actually interpret her as a kind of manifestation of grief and regret. Later in the story, Belle talks about how the grief will crawl into you, it will burrow, it will find a nesting place. Almost as if he's talking from experience, probably referring to her losing her mother and never dealing with it. And to further draw this connection, we can also see that the pictures here are very similar. So, deal with your grief. Do not let it find a nesting place. And thanks for watching.